Welcome to our webinar, Dementia Friendly Design at Home. I'm Sherri Snelling, and I'm a corporate gerontologist, an authorpreneur, and also CEO founder of the Caregiving Club. And I also host a podcast called Caregiving Club on Air and consult for a variety of different companies and provide educational content like the webinar that you are about to listen to. So here's what we're going to cover today. First of all, I'm going to go over just some basics in what we call universal design, which is really focused around ADA or American Disabilities Act compliant design for aging in your home, staying at your home as long as possible and as independently as possible. But I'm also going to weave in some elements of my Well Home Design for Life plans, which really have to do more with the wellness side of our environments and how those support our health and our happiness through life. And then we're going to dive into the specifics of how do we change our home environments to be safe and accessible and to support a loved one who has dementia or Alzheimer's, which I think is very important and something I get a lot of questions about. We'll have a lot of tips on this dementia-friendly design and solutions for you, and then certainly we'll have some resources for you at the end if you want to pursue making these modifications and making these changes in your home or your loved one's home. So I'm going to start first with setting the stage, talking about the ancient brain. And the ancient brain is based on, when we lived 2 to 3 million years ago out on the African savanna. This is basically the scene that our brains saw. So it's blue skies, fresh air that we could smell, sense of whether the rain was coming or whether it was going to be warm. You see those mosaic of trees, and what those show us is there's shelter from the sun, but there's also safety from predators. We can crawl up in the trees to be safe. You also see this wonderful grassland. So you see colors and you see the greenery, the bushes, and maybe there were even some colors that were, woven throughout this landscape. And what that told your brain is, okay, there is a water source in this area, and there's also a food source in this area. And so, again, all of these things were very comforting and very soothing to our ancient brains. And I want you to keep this in mind as we go through this webinar, because I'm going to refer back to how we want to try to replicate some of these environments in our home. And this is really regardless of whether you have Alzheimer's or dementia, it really has to do for all of us in terms of our wellness and better brain health. Now, the other thing that is really important before we dive into the specifics of the design is that many of the homes, particularly the homes that our loved ones may have lived in, our childhood homes, they've been there for decades. These homes, half of all homes that we have today in the US were built before 1980, and about 35% of homes were built in the 1970s. So that means that these homes are 40 to 50 years old. Now, that doesn't mean that you haven't maybe made some modifications or your parents haven't made some upgrades over the years, but for the most part, there are still some issues in terms of being able to have these homes be safe and accessible as we age and we start to realize certain physical things like arthritis or osteoporosis, declining eyesight or hearing, and a lot of other things that happen with aging. And so a great professor that I had at the USC School of Gerontology was John Pinus, who's really a pioneer in home modification as we age. And he coined a term called Peter Pan homes. And what that means is for most of us, our homes were built for people who will never grow old. And so we know that at least 1 in 3 adults over the age of 65 does have trouble with at least one feature in their home. And only 1% of the 100 million homes in the US have any type of universal design feature, which is something that, again, really aids us whether we have a disability, whether we're aging, and quite frankly, can be made at any age. It doesn't have to be required that something has changed in your life. It actually would make the home more safe for everybody of every age. So what is universal design? So basically there's kind of 4 principles, if you will, that we think of in universal design, that it be ageless. So whether you're 8 or 80, it's easy to use. It makes things easier. Accessibility, how easy is it to open really heavy doors or try to find, a key, in a lock? adaptability, and also assistive. So as you see some of the images up there, the ageless is represented by the dropped curbs, and these were done when the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, came into being. And so this is great for people in wheelchairs, but if you look at this curb, it's also great for moms with strollers. So again, this is a real kind of case study, if you will, in how ageless design works, where it works for a variety of different people in different circumstances. In the accessibility, you see there the hotel doors that automatically open. So again, this is making things easier for people, whether you're younger and small or whether you're older and don't have as much, muscle strength, bone strength to get things open. The adaptability would be the sink. And as you see that it's applied to the wall where you can lower and increase the height of the sink depending on who you are. So if you're living in a home with someone who needs to sit or use a wheelchair in order to brush their teeth or, wash their face, then you can easily hit the switch on the wall and it'll lower the sink, and then you can bring it back up for somebody who doesn't need to sit and who is still standing. And then assistive is something probably many of us have in our homes. These are the OXO Good Grips. They were actually created by an engineer who watched his wife struggle with arthritis and trying to peel potatoes and carrots, and he created this rubber grip around the handle, and that became this cottage industry of all these utensils. But when we think about OXO Good Grips, again, we don't buy them because we have arthritis or because we have another disability or issue. We buy them because they're just easier to use for everybody. And I think, again, most of us probably have at least one of these utensils in our kitchen or in our garage. And so this is another great example of universal design. And, some other things that are happening, for instance, we know that hospital beds, used to be something that you really rejected. You didn't want to bring that hospital bed into your home. And yet, now we see with, Gen X and millennials and Gen Z, adjustable beds are what you want. And that's the same thing as what we used to call a hospital bed. But now adjustable beds are known to help with sleep science and getting, that restorative sleep that we need. It's another great example of how things change in terms of being seen as something that was only for a certain subset or a small group of people who maybe had a disability or a chronic illness or, were coming home to rehabilitate. Now it's seen as something good for everybody. So just some really quick universal design basics. And I have a whole separate webinar that I do that takes you room by room in a home to talk about how we modify those rooms for better aging. And it goes a lot more in depth than what I'm going to do here. But just some real quick basics. You don't want to have knobs that turn, because this, again, might be hurtful to the wrist. We don't have as good of a grip strength as we age. Now, for someone with dementia, you see the faucets there for the bathroom. You also want to do something that might be labeled. These actually have the engraved hot and cold on the actual faucet. But you may need to put a little sign, that reminds them which one is hot and which one is cold. You also see the doorknobs there. The turning the wrist is going to hurt. You want lever handles. Certainly wider doorways for walkers and wheelchairs. We're going to talk about rugs throughout this conversation, and I'll go, into some detail about falls at home, which we know 2 million seniors end up in the ER every year because they've fallen at home. And then easy, access things like in the kitchen, pull out drawers and cabinets would make it so much easier. So we don't have to get down on our knees and try to dig in the back of a cabinet to find a pot or pan or spices or whatever it is. And so we have this kind of saying in gerontology, from the nose to the knees. You want to make everything that you need to work with in your life between, accessibility through between the nose and the knees. So it's really in that mid area where you don't have to reach real high up or even get on a ladder, and you don't have to, crouch down or get on your knees to find something. Now, as I mentioned, I do well home design for life plans now, and I've worked with a lot of interior designers and builders and even real estate agents on really incorporating much more than just, okay, is the home safe and is it accessible? Are there assistive devices? That's the universal design side of this. I have a checklist that's really more about wellness in the home, and it's really based on principles that come from the well building standards, which which is an organization that has been formed mostly for retail and commercial and corporate buildings, but I am applying a lot of those principles to home design. And so I'm going to take you through some quick, basics about biophilic design. Certainly, air care we know has become much more important. We saw that through COVID. We're looking for ways to make sure that we can make the air a better quality in our homes. Lighting becomes really, really beneficial and helpful as we age, because at the age of 60, we need 3 times the light as we did at the age of 20. And again, this is just the aging of the eyes doesn't let as much light in, so we need more light, particularly around task areas like the kitchen or the bathroom. And then soundscapes, and this is part of the multi-sensory environments now that we're looking to create at home that touch in, that tap into the sense, the sounds, touch, taste, smell. All these things become really important in a wellness environment, and soundscapes are something that's really important for people with dementia. So I'm going to talk about that in a couple minutes more in more detail. And just to really quickly touch upon biophilic home design, basically the concept here is you want to bring nature inside. Now, this is where I'm going to go back to that, African savanna, what the ancient brain is craving. It's craving those elements that it used to see on that savanna, which made us feel safe, made us feel comforted. We want to try to bring that into the home in certain ways. And it's really based around nature. So as you see in some of these beautiful images, there's a living wall for an indoor outdoor living area. You see the wood on the ceiling, you see the lighted fountain so you can see the ripples in the water. You see the fireplace that's elevated now to the middle of the wall rather than sitting flat on the ground where it might be obstructed and you can't really see it. Now you see this beautiful sense of warmth in the home. I love the kitchen image here because those windows are fantastic. You're looking out onto nature. You have a lot of wood elements and floating shelves in your kitchen, and that's something, again, that's really soothing. Having windows that open where we can get that fresh air, and even having a real kind of almost a billowy, gauzy curtain that we can see the wind kind of coming through the window. And then my favorite is on the lower right-hand side here. This is the Frank Lloyd Wright collection by Breezio for bathrooms. It's not inexpensive. It's on my fantasy wish list, but it is absolutely beautiful. And as you can see, all the wood elements, the greenery, there's a water shower or water fountain shower head similar to his falling water architecture. Anyway, it's really fantastic. And all of these things are now becoming more of the trends that we see in homes, and it's particularly soothing to our brains for better brain health, and particularly soothing to people who also have Alzheimer's. So let's get into the 5 C's of well home design specifically for those with dementia. Now, I write in my new book, Me Time Monday, the weekly wellness plan to find balance and joy for a busy life. I have sections throughout the book that do talk about our built environments and environmental health, particularly in our home and our offices. But when it comes to really looking at the proper design for dementia friendly design, I want to focus on 5 areas. And it's going to be color, clutter free, contrast, comfort sources, and curves. So let's get into these 5 C's. So let's start with color. First of all, from a sleep science perspective, we know that based on circadian rhythm, so again, going back to that African savanna where it was very bright daylight, and then at night, we might have a little fire for a little warmth, but we had a lot of darkness. And so we want to try to replicate that to get better sleep, restorative sleep. One of the things that many of us make a mistake about is we do have maybe some night lights. We put those strips under the bed, which are really great, by the way, for people who are older. It's great to have a nightlight, but also to have a little strip under the bed, which you can get those little LED strips that just attach, kind of like tape under the bed, are really great because you can see right where you're stepping. But the mistake we make is we have them in a blue light. Now, what the brain sees when it sees blue light is the sun. Because even though the sun, we think of it being orange or yellow or even sometimes even white, it's really blue light emission. And we also get a lot of blue light emission from all of the digital tools that we have, our smartphones, our televisions, our computers and iPads, and even our LED lights in our bedroom lights. All of this is blue light. And what that's telling the brain to do is wake up. And instead, if you need to get up at night because you have to use the bathroom or whatever, you want the orange, amber, kind of more of a reddish hue, because what this tells the brain is, it's dusk, or the fire, it's dark, there's still that nice firelight, it's nighttime. Your brain won't wake up like it would with blue light. So we always encourage people to embrace kind of these orangey, red, amber hues and nightlights instead. Now, one of the things that happens with someone with dementia is something called sundowning. It usually happens in the second or middle stage of the disease. About 70% of all of those who have Alzheimer's will have sundowning experiences. And what this is at dusk, the person with dementia becomes extremely agitated, extremely paranoid, can even lash out physically, whether it's crying or screaming. It's a very disruptive and very discomforting situation, particularly for family caregivers who don't maybe know as much about it. Science is still looking into why this is happening. We know it's based around circadian rhythms, because one of the things that happens in person who has dementia or Alzheimer's, their circadian rhythms are completely disrupted. So they're going to be a lot more active during the nighttime. This is where we see a lot of wandering. We see a lot of activity. They'll come down into the kitchen and start baking or whatever. And meanwhile, it's 2, 3, 4 in the morning when you're trying to sleep. We also then see them be a little sleepier during the day. And they're not getting as much of that natural sunlight into their system, where they're absorbing that will help to regulate, again, those circadian rhythms. So a couple things you can do. First of all, you can get shades. If you're living with the person and you're at home, you just want to make sure you pull all the shades and cover the windows before dusk happens, because the disappearance of the sunlight seems to somehow really be upsetting. So if we can eliminate that and it's still light outside, but you pull the drapes down, now all of a sudden there isn't that disappearance. It's just this, oh, okay, we're going to shut the drapes right now. It's still, sunlight out, whatever. You don't have that kind of interaction, and we believe that will help. Now, if you're not home with your loved one and they're living, on their own, or you're working and they're at home, and this is usually in the early or mid stage of the disease, you might want to think about smart shades, where you can automatically, off an app on your phone, have the shades come down before, again, that dusk happens, when they might experience this sundowning. The other thing that we're seeing that's really encouraging is there's being some studies done now that are using light therapy lamps. And as you can see, there's little, almost like a little tablet, and it emits light that your loved one would sit for about 20 minutes, maybe mid-morning or lunchtime. And this is if they can't get outside, by the way. The best thing for them is to get outside and be active and absorb sunshine that's natural. But if they can't, and we know with winter months that becomes a lot tougher, or maybe they're not as mobile, use this light therapy as a possible way to, again, decrease the episodes of sundowning or lessen the severity of them. It all is based on circadian rhythms, and it's all those light and dark cycles that our brain interprets in terms of soothing us and making us calm. Now, something else in color that's really important is, again, you and your loved one may have decided, listen, you want to still have them feel as independent as possible, have a life that is full of, thriving and dignity despite their diagnosis. And so they may still be getting out on their own. However, we do know that throughout the stages of the disease, there's confusion. And so if your loved one has walked maybe to the grocery store, or, they've driven to, an activity, and now they're coming home, all of the doors and all of the homes may look alike. Or very often in communities, a lot of the doors are the same color, or at least very close to the same color, maybe almost like a neutral color. So really what you want to think about is making your door stand out. Now, whether that's painting it bright red, by the way, red is a great color for people with Alzheimer's in a lot of ways, and I'll explain that in a minute. But, it might be bright orange, it might be bright red, it could be bright yellow, or maybe you put a beautiful wreath on the door, something that really makes your furniture door stand out that will tap into the memories, the long-term memories in the brain that they have that will help remind them, oh, yes, this is my house. Now, I mentioned red as a color. One of the things that we've seen in a lot of surveys is that a lot of people with Alzheimer's, not only do they forget to eat as they get into the later stages, but they're resistant a little bit to eating even in mid-stage. And what we have found is that when you use white plates and cups, which most of us do have, there isn't an incentive for the brain to eat. Because again, going back to the ancient brain, the brain ate when it saw color. It saw greens, it saw berries, it saw flowers and herbs and spices and, other things that it could, that it could find that were eating sources. And so these colors start to encourage eating. And what's really interesting is the color red and also the color blue will increase the appetite and the eating of somebody who has dementia by about 25 to 28%. So anything that helps you to encourage them to eat and keep their stamina and their strength up is really great. And to also stay hydrated, by the way, which is a big issue for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, the other thing you can do with colors you see on those colorful cabinet drawers is, again, if all the drawers are the same color, then it becomes frustrating because they forget where their pajamas are versus their socks. So you can either label the drawers or you can paint them different colors that they would then resonate with, and it would be a reminder of where that is. Or you can put a little image of a sock or a pajama shirt or whatever on the drawer, so that's a reminder. Now, when it comes to rugs, as I mentioned, fall prevention is a huge part of living with someone with dementia and helping them be safe at home. For all of our seniors, we know that falls become a lot more serious. And part of it is because we don't have the muscle strength. Maybe we've got a lot of osteoporosis or arthritis and joint pain. We don't step over things as easily. But with a person with Alzheimer's and dementia, they also have a lack of balance. We see a lot of balance issues with people who have dementia. And so we want to be really cautious about rugs. So you want to make sure that all the corners of those rugs are taped down really solidly. And if you can't, I have a solution coming up in a couple slides. But let me also mention colors of rugs. Now, you see the rug in the middle there, which has got a really crazy pattern. It's a very, active pattern, lots of things that the eye is looking at. Active and busy patterns like this can actually be a source of agitation for people with Alzheimer's. And so, despite the fact that it might be okay in terms of safety and you've taped it down, they may see this and they may become very agitated. They may become irritable. Sometimes that's as simple as that. People often say, why is my loved one so irritable? It can sometimes be because of the environment. So you want to use solid colors, or you want to use patterns that have curves and circles, something that flows and something that's got a nice color to it, that soothes the brain. Now, the black rugs are something that are really important for people to know. Person with Alzheimer's will see this as a black hole in the floor and they will avoid it at all costs. They will walk around it, which again, if you've got a lot of things around this particular black rug, they could be bumping into furniture, things to avoid this black rug. So you want to really take away all of the really dark black or really dark, dark, dark brown rugs out of the home, because it's a source of, again, discomfort and fear for them. Now, when it comes to contrast, as you see in that beautiful kitchen, we've got the greens. And by the way, green is the best color for aging eyes. It's in the middle of the color spectrum. It's the color we actually see the longest. We start to lose a little bit of the sense of vision and color as we age around really pale pastels like yellows and lavenders. We don't see those as well as we age, but green is one that stays with us. Green is also the most optimistic color that was found in a survey among older adults, that green is encouraging because it represents thriving and life. So you might, if you're doing any home modifications, even for yourself, you might want to think about green in certain spaces. But you also see the beautiful butcher block counter there. So there's a lot of contrast between the cabinets and the shelving and the counters, which is really, really critical. You want to make sure that those things are easily seen and don't blend all together. People love all white kitchens, but when everything is starting to blend together as you age, it becomes a lot more difficult to really differentiate where the edge of a counter, or where you're cutting or whatever is going on. Now, in the hallway there, a lot of people with a loved one with dementia also like to make sure there's contrast between the floor and the walls, but very often we might have a lighter floor and we have whiter light walls and white doors. So in order to make sure that they know where their room is, you may want to put a border, a frame around the door. Now you can do it on one door, you can do it on all doors. Maybe they're even different colors to different rooms. But again, they will look in the hallway and not even really see the door and become a little confused, like, am I in the wrong place? So framing up those doors is important. You see in the bathroom images there on the right-hand side, again, differentiation between the tiles on the walls. One has kind of more of a wooden tile look to it versus the floor. The other one has that darker green, which is really beautiful. But again, in the bathroom, you want a lot of contrast between cabinets and counters and floors and tile, in the showers and all that. And then when it comes to stairs, again, stairs are a great falls source. As we age, it becomes more difficult to navigate stairs, pick our feet up appropriately, find our balance. So a couple of things you want to think about is you want to put some light strips under the steps where they may have to walk into the house. This could be on the side door or it could be on the front door. You also want to have handrails on both sides so that they can steady and balance themselves coming up or going in or coming out. And then again, if you don't want a loved one going maybe to the second floor just to avoid the risk of falls, this particular image has it has kind of a little illustration in the middle of it that's painted, but it's mostly a black staircase, which means that the person with Alzheimer's will probably avoid those stairs and not go up those stairs. Now, when it comes to curves, again, what happens in the ancient brain that we still have is anything that's spiky and it's got sharp corners meant it could hurt us. So we would avoid it, right? And so what you want to do is you want to overcome that by making things curved and rounded. There's a sense of joy and there's a sense of comfort when we see rounded or flowing kind of imagery. So as you see in the living room there's a rounded couch and rounded ottomans. Now, when it comes to these nesting tables in the middle, the nesting tables with the marble on the top are great. They do have metal, so you could stub your toe, or if you are out of balance, you could bump into them, and we bruise more easily as we age. So maybe think about more of that fabric. We've got a velvet ottoman right below that could be used. The kitchen, by the way, has got a beautiful blue. Blue is also another really positive color for aging. It's close to green, green being the best, blue probably being the second best, just in terms of a soothing environment. But as you see the counters there, they're rounded. The corners are not sharp. And then also the backs of the chairs are rounded, and we're using rattan. And then we have what we call D-rings or pull on the cabinets. And again, you don't want knobs because it becomes too hard with someone with arthritis to get their hand around a knob and be able to pull. So you want something they can get their fingers behind to pull out the cabinets. And then in the middle there, we've got a chair rail and we've got picture framing in terms of the molding, which looks really beautiful, very traditional look. The reason for putting the rails up in hallways is again a balance issue. You can make it decorative so that it doesn't scream nursing home, but at the same time you need to make something that they could kind of balance themselves with. If they were off balance, they could kind of have their hand against that rail to help them walk down the hallway and stay in balance. And then finally, the dining room table there is beautiful wood. It's got the round table to it, so we aren't going to bump into it and hurt ourselves necessarily, and also the rounded back chairs. Now, clutter is bad for all of us. As we're looking at this image, I mean, I'm already feeling stressed. This kind of looks like my college dorm room or sorority room, I guess. But one of the things that we really want to be cautious of with a loved one who has Alzheimer's is if we happen to be a clutter bug, we really need to learn some cleanup techniques because this is a very disturbing scene for someone with Alzheimer's. So if you have a lot of piles of magazines or newspapers or clothing that isn't being washed, it's kind of just maybe strewn everywhere, this becomes a source of agitation. Again, we have families who say, "Why is my loved one so agitated?" Well, when you look at the home environment, this is why, because the brain is reacting to an environment where there's chaos and we can't see things. There could be a predator, right underneath some of that pile of clothes. So we just our brains reject this. And that's for all of us, by the way. So what we really want to do is we want to simplify, right? We want something soothing and calming, like this image here. It's got some wood elements. I would pick up those blankets off of the bed, though. I will say, maybe I didn't get the right image for this, but you don't want them to trip over that. But it's got the soothing colors, it's got simplicity, it's got greenery. This brings us back to the African savanna, and we're calm, we're soothed, we feel better in this kind of an environment. So when it comes to clutter-free and safety, one of the things again that we know is that a lot of people with Alzheimer's are active at night. They want to get up out of bed, or they might toss and turn more than regular. So a lot of people want to have three-quarters of the bed almost contained. So whether that's kind of a cubbyhole bed, like you see in the upper left there, where there's three walls, and then they can certainly get out on the one side. And then you may have to use, I was in gymnastics years ago when I was a kid, you may have to use these kind of quasi gymnastic mats where you put them up against the bed. And then if they do happen to fall out, at least they're falling onto a softer surface. They're not going to experience the broken bones that we see. Some people use trundle beds, as you see there in the upper right. You just pull that out at night. And again, if they roll off, they're going to roll onto that other bed. Now, one thing I want to caution you about is many people opt for these guardrails, and they used to be used, and quite frankly, they are used still in some places, although they are being taken out of most nursing homes and a lot of assisted living. And the reason why is because the Food and Drug Administration and the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission had received death and injury reports related to these adult portable bed rail products. And so it was because the people in the bed would become entrapped. They'd be, tangled up in blankets. They could asphyxiate and suffocate from the sheets being all tangled around these things. They were falling because they were very fearful of these bars. They weren't natural, so they were trying to get around them. So we don't advise these at all anymore. They are still being sold, unfortunately, on places like Amazon and Home Depot and other places. But I think that what you want to do is be very attentive to the fact that these are not safe for your loved one and could cause more harm than good. There's got to be other ways to keep our loved ones safe in bed, that some of those options that I just mentioned to you. So definitely don't do that. Now I mentioned the rugs, and sometimes rugs are heirlooms, and if we can't get it taped down well enough, the option was, well, we're going to have to get rid of it. Well, that can become very disconcerting. For any of us who have a love of things and it has a meaning to it, it has a story behind it. So there's a couple options for you. You can take a photo of it and you can frame that photo, and they can always look at that photo and have a reminder of that beautiful rug. The other thing that I've seen a lot of families do is to use the rug as a wall hanging. So, just take a blank wall and put it up, and now it's not going to be a trip hazard, but it's still providing that comfort and that story that person has. You can also cut the rug up and frame it and put it on the wall, so at least there's a portion of the rug. So there's a lot of options besides just, trashing it, and getting rid of something that really is more of a comfort source for people. The other thing from a clutter-free safety is you want to get organized in the pantries. Again, you want to have everything in clear view. You want to label stuff. And you want to be mindful of expiration dates too. You may want to put expiration dates on things. And there are some companies now that are actually doing this automatically, where you can buy the containers that you can set the expiration dates. But it becomes really important to label things because, again, somebody with dementia will get confused over all the different spices and salt versus sugar and all that. I love this medicine cabinet because it's got a chalkboard. So you can do a little note as you see there. I love you. Have a great day. But you can also do a reminder, take this medicine in the yellow bottle or whatever it happens to be. And, you see the little clock in the medicine cabinet there? This is another thing that we really encourage people to do in a dementia friendly design is have clocks almost everywhere in every room. The reason being is that a lot of people with dementia will not remember certain things, but they will remember routines and timing. So if you always call them at noon, and they all of a sudden see the clock and it's 5 to noon, there's this wonderful anticipatory, okay, I'm going to talk to my daughter or my son in 5 minutes. So having clocks everywhere is a great reminder because that's something they won't automatically remember, even if they have like a watch on. So we have clocks in pretty much every room for those routines. But you want to clear the clutter in the medicine cabinet. Don't have anything that might be harmful, that they may take mistakenly. Only have the basics there and make sure everything is well labeled and maybe even think about putting the pills in different colored bottles. There's a lot of technology out there right now that helps with medication reminders and safety and adherence and not having drug interactions with different drugs. So there's a lot of things you can do. Now, the other thing I really love about safety is the iGuard stove product, which full disclosure, this is a company that I've been an advisor for. So I don't get paid if you buy the iGuard stove. I just want you to know, but I have advised them and I think it's a wonderful product. What it does is it automatically shuts off the stove. If someone with dementia has turned on the stove to cook and then they forgot, and they've wandered away or they've walked away, the iGuard stove will intelligently know that there's no movement around the stove and it'll just automatically shut it off. We know that people over the age of 80 are in the highest risk group for dying in a home fire. And a lot of home fires start in the kitchen. Now, if you wait for a smoke alarm to go off, or there's other products that will drop like a foam or a sand or something, on the fire, the problem is the fire has started for those products to work. This particular product, iGuard stove, turns the stove off before there's any fire. So this is why I love this because let's face it, we don't want the fire to even start and then have to put it out because those fires can engulf a room in 2 minutes. So this is a really great product that I really love for people with dementia. And then also you want to get into maybe some of the apps that, and that use remote monitoring, if your loved one's at home, and you don't want them leaving during the day, maybe you have an app where the door is locked. Now, if they do need to get out, you can unlock it for them so that you don't have a safety hazard there. There's also a lot of GPS technology that we're using these days in shoes and watches and lavaliers and other things. The other place where, as I mentioned, there's a lot of safety hazards is in the bathroom. And that's for all of us, by the way. That's anybody of any age with no disability or disease. 80% of the falls in the home happen in the bathroom. So for someone who's older, as you see in the upper left-hand corner there, the grab bars are beautiful. They're in all the right places. You've got a no-step entry or curbless shower, which is really great. But let me point out, for a dementia person, this may not be perfect because you see all the white. There's no contrast. You can't see the seat necessarily. You can't see the floor. So you want more contrast. So moving to that middle image where you see the wooden bench and the beautiful wooden grab bar. By the way, grab bars are great for any age because towel bars that we have in our bathrooms will not hold our weight if we're off balance and we grab it, it'll come right out of the wall. Grab bars today that are really utilitarian and really hold your weight, they do have to be grounded into the wall properly. You want a professional who knows ADA design to do it. You can't just get any handyman to do it. They won't ground it properly. I've seen way too many improperly installed grab bars. So you want to make sure you get somebody who knows how to do it right. But also they're beautiful. They don't have to look again like a nursing home. So you want that contrast. You see the tile on the floor is different from the tile on the wall, is different from the chair that can fold down, is different from the grab bar. This is the perfect kind of scenario. Now, I love black and white bathrooms, but this one that you're seeing here, this is a no-no. Why is it a no-no? Well, good contrast, right? With the wall and the floor. But but black tile, no good. Your loved one won't take a shower ever again if you've got black tile in the bathroom. So you want to be really cautious about the design choices that you might be making because it could, be the hygiene factor later in life. But, you can think about that because again, like I said, I love black and white bathrooms, but you got to be cautious about that. Now, when you have a curbless shower, sometimes also the tiles on the floor, if you have tile on the floor of the bathroom, it's cold. A lot of older adults won't even go into the bathroom because it's so cold. So again, we see personal hygiene issues where they're not showering because it's just too cold in the morning. You can do radiant heat flooring. It's not too expensive and it's not hard to install. So you see that in the lower left. Also, you want to be cautious about shower temperatures because as we get older, our skin gets thinner and you become much more sensitive to heat and cold. And you can scald yourself really easily as an older person. In your 20s and 30s, you can take that really hot heat after, a weekend of working out or whatever you've been doing. But when you're older, you can't do it. So products like Moen, which is what I'm showing here, not only again is there a digital clock in the shower, great, that's what you need, but also a temperature control where you can set a maximum so that your loved one will never be scalded again. Those can be set up through those smart temperature designs they have. And when it comes also to the bathroom, mirrors become important because as someone with dementia looks into a mirror, they sometimes don't recognize themselves. They think, who is that older person? This is part of what happens in the brain of someone with dementia, where a lot of the memories and what we think of ourselves goes back to the ages of between 15 and 25. We don't see ourselves growing older. So when we see an older person, we become very paranoid, we become fearful, who is that person in the mirror? So a lot of times we take the mirrors out, but you still might need a mirror to put on, makeup or brush your teeth or do whatever. So you want to have these smaller mirrors or even the handheld mirrors where they can just look very close into their face and not see the whole visage of somebody they don't recognize. And then again, going back to the balance on the lower right there, you see this beautiful kind of grab bar around the toilet tissue holder. And this is again to help lower yourself onto the toilet and also to pull yourself up. Think about that because we only think about grab bars being in the shower, but we also have to think about the functionality of things like the toilet. And this is a really beautiful looking grab bar that really helps out. Now, comfort sources is another C in our dementia friendly design. You see on the top row there, that's my grandmother's typewriter. That's also her Royal Dalton figurine that was passed down to me that shows little Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, which we've had in our family for generations. And then also the leather chair is called the writer's chair. It's a gift I gave to myself after I finished my first book called A Cast of Caregivers. And these are comfort sources to me. These are in places that are, they're set out. I can see them. And they really, again, they fill my heart. They make me feel good. These are the things we need to think about with our loved one. What will make them feel joy? What will make them, bring back those good memories? Now, one of the things you want to think about with photo albums in your older loved one, they probably won't recognize younger grandchildren. The shorter term memory that we have, the less we retain that if we have Alzheimer's or dementia. We're going to remember the memories of when we were a kid or when our children were really, young and we were first married. So you want to get the older photos out. You want to bring those memories back because that's what they're really going to resonate with. Also, comfort sources like maybe The Gift from the Sea, which is about poetry. One of the things we know about dementia and reading is that even if you've been a lover of fiction and biographies where you have to follow the person, the storyline, as you develop dementia, you cannot follow the storyline anymore. You read a few pages or a chapter, and then the next day you don't recall what happened. So it becomes a very frustrating experience. But poetry, picture books, things that are of interest that way are great books to have on hand. Yellow is a source, again, of happiness. It actually is part of color psychology. It's been used in hospitals and other places. There's a lot of science behind yellow. Part of it, again, goes back to the ancient brain. We see yellow and we see a food source. We see sunshine. That makes us happy. So if you have the ability to have something, I love that little happy flower holder and the yellow flowers, think about bringing that into your loved one's home. It's amazing how some of these small things make such a huge difference. And then again, we all have beautiful throws and everything that we have in our living rooms. But what would be really comforting to your loved one is maybe quilt that they had as a child or their grandmother's quilt. Again, think about the past. Think about bringing in those comfort sources that really evoke a sense of joy, a sense of history and connection that they really do remember. And then another comfort source, as I mentioned, this multi-sensory, sight, smells, sound, aromatherapy is another great one. As you head into holiday time frames, the smells of holidays are wonderful. But soundscapes are becoming really critical in health. We see them more now in a lot of the senior living communities and memory care facilities and communities, but we want to bring it into the home as well. So I just want to touch on two quick ones here. There are colors of noise. It's called sonic hues. Now, you've heard about white noise to help you with sleep, but actually, the number one noise color that you should choose is pink. And doctors who, are pediatricians caring for young children, all the way through geriatricians who care for older people, all of the physicians say pink noise is the most beneficial if you're trying to get better sleep at night and be calmer. And the reason why is because it replicates nature sounds. It's light rain. It's the ripples of waves on the beach. It's light wind. Rustling leaves, and it's got a higher pitch. And what this does in terms of our ancient brain is, again, it resonates with that nature environment we used to sleep in. And it gets us to sleep faster and keeps us asleep longer. Now, you may have heard of things like green noise. I see a lot of commercials out there about green noise, which I'm sure they're tapping into the quote unquote green equals nature. Green is also beneficial, but green noise is not as beneficial as pink. It won't get you to sleep as quickly and it won't keep you in sleep as long. And then there's other things. White noise is just a consistency. It's more about masking other sounds that you might hear that are disruptive. So it's kind of like a fan or a television static. Some people like white noise and some people like brown noise or red noise, which is thunder and waterfalls and heavy rainfall. So it's very personalized in terms of the sonic cue that works for us, but the one that usually works for most people is the pink noise. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing, and I did actually a podcast interview, if you're interested in checking that out, with Dr. Charles Spence from the University of Oxford. He is the leading worldwide researcher in sounds in music and dining. And he has turned his attention now to the older adult population and particularly people with dementia because his mother had it. And this became a personal mission of his. But he calls it musical menus or sonic seasoning. And one of the things that we know, again, is as we age, medications and we lose some of our taste buds and the food just doesn't taste the same. So we want it, we want more sugar, we want more salt, which of course is bad for us, right? We can't do that. If we've got diabetes, we have to lower our sugar intake. If we have high blood pressure, we have to lower our blood pressure and our salt intake. So this makes the food really, really bland, and then people don't want to eat. So what he has found is that when you use higher pitch sounds, so like a tinkling piano or sopranos like a Mariah Carey or even a Taylor Swift, it'll make the food taste sweeter. So even though you haven't put extra sugar into the food, it triggers in the brain that the food tastes sweeter. On the opposite end, lower pitch, so you take the bass sounds and the baritones, the Johnny Cash and Frank Sinatra and even Karen Carpenter had a lower, kind of more of a baritone pitch. That actually makes the foods taste saltier and more savory. So use your music with your loved one. Again, music is the memory in the brain that we keep the longest, okay? Out of all the memories that we retain, music is the one we retain the longest. We've seen amazing therapeutic interventions using music and people with dementia. Well, now we can also apply it to their dining, and we can use the red and blue plates, and we can use the right music, and it'll all encourage them to hopefully eat better and more routinely. And then, in terms of resources, again, it's really vital that you turn to experts. So a gerontologist like myself or an occupational therapist will come into the home and just at least make sure it's safe and it's accessible. Social workers also go through credentials. Now, most of these folks go through just the universal design credentials, which you see there through CAPS, CLIP, and SHSS. But that's only going to make things accessible, safe, ageless. If you really want the well home design that I've been talking about, that's where you're going to have to tap into a whole new breed of people like me. There's not a lot of us yet, but it's building. This whole wellness movement is building in our environments. Dr. Esther Sternberg is another person who has a new great book out, and she does a lot of great work at the University of Arizona. But you're going to see a lot more of this, and it certainly is very helpful to have that wellness overlay for people with dementia to keep them soothed in their home environment. And then you can also tap into volunteers. Rebuilding Together is in a lot of different communities, different chapters across the country. Habitat for Humanity, they will mostly help with the home building, whereas Rebuilding Together will come in and they'll install cabinets and things and help with, making those cabinets roll in and out. Again, if you're going to do things like grab bars or other things that really require someone who understands aging, you want to get an expert. You're going to want to get somebody who's been ADA trained, who's been CAPS or CLIP or SHSS trained. You're going to ask that question. And then also faith-based organizations have a lot of volunteers that can come in and do little things like help paint a room a different color, or paint cabinets or whatever it is that you're trying to do to modify your home to make it more dementia friendly. And then here are some more resources for you. I write a lot about well home design on my blog, The Snug Home, which is actually becoming now my third book. But I really appreciate your attention. I hope I was able to share with you some good tips and solutions on making a home dementia friendly. And again, thank you so much for listening. If you want to book a webinar for your group, please reach out to us at info@caregivingclub.com, or you can also send me a personal email at Sherri@caregivingclub.com. And we're going to look to do more of these on-demand webinars for you that are helpful for everybody. So again, thank you, take care, and stay well.